Hello and welcome to Political Brew. I'm Phil Hirschkorn. Our 4 topics this week: the U.S. Senate race, Susan Collins is all in; the gubernatorial race with new health care plans; ranked choice voting, the state legislature debates expanding it to all elections; and a visit from the Secretary of Defense, a morale boost for Bath Iron Works. My guests are Betsy, a Democratic former candidate for Senate and governor and longtime people's advocate at the State House, and Joe Bruno, a Republican, former House Minority Leader and Select Board member in Raymond. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
This week, Susan Collins made her re-election bid official with a video short showing her opening a box of New Balance sneakers made in Skowhegan.
This is perfect for 2026 because I'm running.
Governor Janet Mills, hoping to win the June Democratic primary to face Collins in November, responded with her consistent line of attack.
Seniority without backbone is nothing but tenure. And I don't think that's what the people of Maine need. They're tired of listening to her being concerned about this, concerned about that. When Alex Preddy was murdered on the streets of Minneapolis, Susan Collins said she was concerned. Most of us were outraged.
I talked to Collins on Announcement Day. You can see the whole unfiltered interview on our streaming app or Channel News Center Maine Plus. Here's how Collins responded to the Mills mantra of concern versus courage.
Well, first of all, it is ludicrous to say that I lack courage or a backbone. If you look at my voting record over the entire time that I've been in the Senate, when I agree with the president, whether it's President Trump or any of the other presidents that I've been privileged to serve with, I vote with them. When I disagree, I don't hesitate to vote against the president's proposal.
Mills's Democratic rival in the Senate race, Graham Plattner, flagged Collins' promise back in 1996 to serve only 2 terms. He said on X, that's just one of 100 reasons she doesn't deserve a 6th term. Well, Joe, this is your candidate, the Republican. Where are we?
It's not a surprise that she's running. I mean, we've known all along.
She's been raising the money.
Right.
Outside groups are pledging money,
exactly.
gathering signatures.
And, she's been a good senator for the state of Maine. Now, it's rich coming from Janet Mills saying she doesn't have a backbone. Janet Mills, who lets laws become law without her signature. Where's the courage in saying, I'm taking a stand on these bills? I'm either going to sign them or I'm going to veto. How rich is that, saying you don't have a backbone?
Well, every governor has done that. But I mean, this is no surprise to no one. It was already announced that outside groups were going to spend $43 million. And so I think that what we're going to look at for the first time in Collins's tenure, which is way past what she said she was going to do, is are Maine people believing her when she says, I can deliver for Maine, given the context of the national scene that she's in, the president that she's serving under, and the diminishing role of Congress. So, and then there's a lot of problematic votes that she took when she hasn't had courage. And I would argue that she has not shown any courage when it really matters. And we have to remember that she's voted with Trump 94% of the time, including those Supreme Court nominees, which in my view has undone the system in a way that is going to take us decades and generations to recover from.
She also voted for Ketanji Brown Jackson. So, I mean,
Democratic Supreme Court nominees,
right.
not just Kavanaugh and Gorsuch.
Right. So this whole Supreme Court thing is a bogus argument by Democrats.
Well, not for women. I mean, the people that she voted for took away Roe v. Wade when she promised us. And she said that Kavanaugh had promised her there was going to be no change in law. And it wasn't even, 8 months before they undid that law? It may not matter to you, but for women, if we can't control our bodies, we can't control anything. And
Roe v. Wade was controversial in 1973. It was a 7-2 decision. White came out with an opinion that says this is totally against the Constitution.
But it was upheld.
But now it went back to the states, and Maine has the most liberal abortion law in the country, besides Minnesota. What's the argument? It went back to the states. We still have abortion, so it didn't do anything that you claim it did.
That's not true. How many states in which abortion is illegal? So you think rich women can just fly across the border? Low-income women don't have access, and it's it's our civil rights and our right to our own body and our body autonomy is not something that should be done on a state-by-state basis.
Joe, Senator Collins voted to confirm most of Trump's cabinet picks, including RFK Jr., who's, I think, fair to say, an anti-vaxxer, or at least a vaccine reformer, if I could be more neutral, and Kristi Noem, who's obviously controversially the head of Homeland Security and these ICE surges, including the one that happened in Maine. How does she balance her record with Trump and so forth?
I mean, remember, Cassidy also voted for RFK Jr.
Senator Cassidy, who chaired the committee.
And he's a physician, went through the same vetting process. I'm not a fan of RFK Jr. at all. I mean, as a healthcare professional, I look at him and I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, he's put people in the FDA who are rejecting applications for new drugs because they just don't like it.
So that's a mistake in her record.
Well,
she's got to explain that.
I mean, yeah, I guess she has to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Betsy, she has voted against Trump. She gave me examples, the Venezuela War Powers Resolution, which ultimately didn't pass. She voted against final passage of the One Big Beautiful Bill, and to reverse some biomedical research cuts she talks about.
And again, I think those are times when it didn't matter, right? So I think that she picks and chooses, and I think that Washington helps her a lot. They know the kind of race she's in. They know that Mainers don't support RFK Jr. They don't support anti-abortion judges. And so they help her out and say, oh, no, you can have this one. We've got you covered on this one. And when they need her, and then she must toe the line, and she does. And Mitch McConnell was brilliant at this, until his downfall.
When he was the leader.
Yeah, when he was the leader. And so I just think, I'd love people to look at her whole record and record over time, because the times when she has been moderate and courageous are times when it has not made a difference in the final vote.
She's brought back $1.5 billion to the state of Maine because of her position on the Appropriations Committee. That is a big deal.
And that's what she's talking about a lot.
Right.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Maine governor's race. Hannah Pingree, a Democratic candidate for governor, has unveiled her health care plan for Maine. Her top 3 priorities: make health insurance more affordable, expand care where people need it, and make communities healthier. At her campaign headquarters in Portland, Pingree told us she intends to expand primary and maternity care while improving access to mental health and addiction treatment and lowering the price of prescription drugs through bulk purchasing. She's also proposing an alternative to Maine Care to help some people get coverage.
As governor, I will launch a new public health insurance option, a state-backed plan that answers to Maine people, not Wall Street or corporate profits. It will not take away private insurance. It will give people and small businesses another choice, a reliable, affordable option that puts pressure on our entire system to lower costs.
And separately, in a sit-down interview with me, which you can see in full on our streaming app, News Center Maine Plus, Pingree gave this rationale for her candidacy.
So you need people who know how to actually get things done in government, and I have been doing that for nearly 25 years. I am not that old, but I've spent nearly half my life in public service, serving at all levels, and I think right now we need that.
Experience counts. She's one of 5 major candidates. Most of them have serious experience in public service.
Yeah. No, I mean, her experience is definitely something that is in her favor. I also think that putting forward a specific plan, I think we're seeing that more on the gubernatorial level now, which I think is a nod to voters. I think voters are actually tired of the back and forth and tired of the sound bites and tired of the but want to see what actually happens and what we can actually do. And I think when candidates start to do that, Democrats win.
Joe, we've talked a lot about the Affordable Health Care Act on this show this season. Obamacare, as it's also known, didn't have a public option at the federal level. That was controversial years ago when it passed. So she wants to do it at the state level. Is that doable?
No. I mean, states have tried it. Look at Vermont. They brought it up. They analyzed it and said, we can't afford this. I mean, it will bankrupt the state. So it's never going to happen in Maine. And I always... I like Hannah. I served with Hannah when her first 2 terms, I believe.
She was in her 20s.
Exactly.
We won't say how old you were, but she was young.
Right. But I mean, she was always very friendly, very likable, and I think she's going to run her campain that way. I hope she does.
Yeah, no,
anyway,
I think she will. She absolutely
that's
will.
the kind of person she is. So I want to say that up front. I really like Hannah Pingree. But every time people talk about lowering prescription drug prices, I've been a pharmacist for 48 years. None of them talk to pharmacists. They talk to these consultants who know nothing about how pharmacy works. bulk purchasing is not a new idea. It's never going to work because the supply chain doesn't work that way. So they need to talk to people who actually know something about lowering prescription drug prices, and that's to go after the PBMs who control drug pricing right now. Bulk purchasing is
PBMs are
pharmacy benefit managers.
the middleman.
So when you hand your insurance card at the pharmacy, it goes through them. They grab a piece of every transaction.
We've got to get you invited to a meeting in Augusta in 2027, whoever's the governor. What about Hannah Pingree and her connection to Governor Mills? Is the Democratic primary in any way a vote of succession?
I think some people see it that way for sure. I think some people have said, a vote for Hannah is a vote for a third term for Janet Mills. I think Hannah would say that's not true. There's, she takes pains to show places where she differs, particularly on tribal sovereignty and other things. So I don't think it's that, and I think she has a different perspective. When you work for someone, you have to reflect them. And so I think people want to know what it is. I just think that the whole thing, this race, right now still, and I think that this healthcare plan is a good pivot away from that, but I think it's been really a name recognition, right? You see Angus King, you see Hannah, and even Dr. Shaw, who have all had tremendous, and to a lesser extent, although more this week, Shanna Bellows and Troy Jackson, we see that people, a lot of it's just who we know and who we think we know. And so I think now as policies start to come out, as we get closer to a June primary, people are going to be able to really see the differences between the candidates and the differences between Hannah and Janet.
Well, another Democrat, Dr. Nirav Shah, who you just mentioned, quietly posted his healthcare plan online the same day as Pingree. No press conference. We hope to talk to him about that next week. A few top lines: cap insurance co-payment and deductibles, end prior authorization for routine and ongoing care, train and recruit more doctors and nurses, make insurance companies stabilize rural hospitals. Joe, what do you think about those ideas?
They're all ideas. It's all in the details on how you're going to do that.
And whether the state has the leverage to do it. Some of these are national issues, right?
You look at the big insurance companies, the CVS Caremarks, the Aetnas, when they own Aetna, United Healthcare, Harvard Pilgrim. They're the ones who are controlling the insurance market. So that's where you need to look. So
to your point about prescription drugs, it's all about controlling the middle people.
Right.
We could get them out of the way and have universal health care and stop all that.
But the idea of, maybe it's pie in the sky, capping co-payments and deductibles keep getting higher and higher, just like premiums. People are getting like nothing for what they pay until they've paid a lot.
People have a choice on when they buy their health insurance. How high of a copay do I want? How high of a deductible do I want?
They don't have an economic choice.
But it's an affordability crisis.
Right.
I got a kick out of Graham Plattner's commercial against Susan Collins saying, oh, Mainers have to work 2 to 3 jobs and we pay all this high bills and everything else. That's all state level stuff. Take a look at Janet Mills. She's the one who did that to you. That's not Susan Collins at the national level. So the high cost of everything in Maine goes back to the Maine legislature run by Democrats for 48 out of the last 50 years.
So it has nothing to do with tariffs, nothing to do with the tax code at the federal level.
Exactly.
No, Joe. Come
Exactly.
on, that is not true.
Okay, we're going to take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about possible changes to voting in Maine. Should ranked choice voting apply to all Maine elections? In case you didn't know, it does not. It is used in all primaries for president, governor, U.S. Senator, U.S. House, and the state legislature. But in our general elections in November, ranked choice voting is used only in those federal office races, not for governor or state legislature. Why? Because Maine Supreme Court decided in 2017 ranked choice is unconstitutional under the Maine Constitution because the Maine Constitution requires the winners of those offices in a general election to be decided by a plurality, not a majority. Now, the state legislature is considering pushing a change to expand ranked choice voting to gubernatorial and legislative general elections. Democratic majorities of both the state House and Senate have endorsed that, but the governor's position, and she has veto power, is unclear. In the meantime, Maine lawmakers are asking the state's Supreme Court to weigh in. Lead sponsor of the change, Lincoln County Democratic Senator Cameron Rennie, said, "We should resolve any lingering constitutional uncertainty. Not enacting this legislation this year risks going through a monumental election year with a patchwork voting system." Some Democrats, like Kennebec County Senator Craig Hickman, were skeptical, saying, "Making major changes to our laws in an election year is simply untenable for me." And here's part of the House floor debate. Republican Jim Thorne against the change and Democrat Mike Brennan for it.
under the Maine Constitution because the Maine Constitution requires the winners of these offices in a general election to be decided by a plurality. And let's not convolute the word plurality.
Under ranked choice voting system, every voter becomes important to a candidate because every voter can vote for multiple candidates.
Joe, why don't Republicans like ranked choice voting?
Because of a dumb system. You know, the only way it works, you have two people running for an office, one gets the most votes, that's the way it is. That's what our Constitution.
But you often have more than two.
That's fine.
So if
The one who gets the most votes wins.
Yeah.
That's what 13 states have done away with, this ranked choice voting, or have banned ranked choice voting as a method of running an election. Republicans do not use ranked choice voting in primaries.
well, and another
Because primaries are a party thing. So Republicans choose not to use it because it's simple. Whoever gets the most votes wins.
That's
Right, but
voters
when-
choose.
so,
It is
yeah.
that way on the ballot. They
Right.
just choose to
Yeah,
do
not
one
to
and
do
done.
it. Yeah.
Okay.
And the problem is when you have 4 or 5 candidates, right? Which I think is good for democracy, to have more people provide access not just to the people who are the legacy candidates, but other people like myself, and I helped write this law, is so that we can say the person who governs should have the benefit of most of the 50% of the people, over 50% of the people, whether it's their first choice or second choice. Otherwise, we have 5 candidates. We have someone like Paul LePage who gets 39% of the vote and is governing with 39% of the vote and claiming it's a mandate. It's not. But if we had seen the second choice vote, right, we might have seen a different outcome. So, and it applies.
Or the same outcome.
Or the same outcome.
But
with-
majority rule.
Exactly, with the majority of Maine people. And that and it works very well in our primaries, and it works very well in our, all of those. And so then to have a bifurcation and then say, well, we're not going to do it in the permanent election is just a mistake. And I think that the whole plurality thing. So the Constitution was written at the Vaughan Homestead, which is a block from my house. And I think
What year?
I can't remember.
A long time
A long
ago.
time ago. And I just wonder if they really gave that much thought to plurality versus the majority. Like I can see them all sitting around, I can picture them all sitting around this table saying, yeah, right, we win by the most votes. And so I just think it's a system, it avoids instant runoffs, which a lot of states have and are much more expensive. And it allows people to say, this is my first person, but if they don't get it, here's my second choice.
It actually is, in a way, an instant runoff. It avoids a new election,
new
runoff
election. Right, yeah.
a month or so later when all the energy has passed
And then it costs
fewer
more money
people are paying
right, yeah,
attention.
yeah.
You don't like the instant runoff factor?
No, I don't. No.
Why not?
What's the problem with it?
It's not democratic.
Well, sure.
This idea that you get a
Majority rule is
you
not
don't get a
democratic?
majority. Look up the term majority. It's the most votes. So if you have 2 candidates or 3 candidates, the majority is the person who gets the most
It's
votes.
not 50 plus 1%? 50% plus 1?
Yeah.
That's
No,
a
it's not.
majority.
Right, but you don't get that in ranked choice voting if
No,
you
they
do the
keep-
math.
they
If
keep
you do
allocating
the
it.
math, it's not a majority.
I guess
No,
I'm
you do.
confused at your
Yeah, me
analysis because
too.
isn't it they allocate
keep
the
going
4th
until
place
someone
votes,
gets
the
50%.
3rd place votes until someone gets to over 50%, right?
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, that's
That's
exactly
not how
it
math
works.
Isn't
works.
that happened with Jared Golden three
I
of
mean,
the
the
last
whole
4 elections?
idea in this ranked choice voting is it's going to bring civility back to elections. It hasn't done any of
Oh,
that.
it has.
Oh,
it has.
Oh, I need all the people to think about me. No, you stand on your platform, you run, and people like you, you vote. By the way, and I'm going to say it again, Republicans don't have to use ranked choice voting
Nobody
in
has to.
primaries.
It's optional.
Right.
You can all do
Right.
one and done. You
Right.
don't, and something I think voters don't know is when there's multiple candidates, you don't have to rank
Right.
everybody.
Right.
Just do
Right.
1 and 2
Yeah.
or
And
3.
but it also requires people to be more civically engaged and learn about more than just their candidate, which I think is better for democracy. And as I said earlier, it allows people to get in the race. In my governor's race, it was 7 candidates. Everyone thought I'd come in 7th. I came in 3rd. And I was very close to coming in 2nd. And so it was because, even though I had not run for office, it was because people said, I really like her. I don't know if she can win, but I'm going to put her first.
You got a lot of second choice votes.
I got a lot of first choice, but believing that the second choice, if I didn't make it, their second choice would count.
Joe, what about Senator Rennie, the sponsor's comment that we have a patchwork system? I mean, isn't it a little confusing that in June, when we have the primaries for governor and state legislature with many candidates, certainly in the governor's race, there'll be ranked choice option, but in the fall, there won't be. Isn't that inconsistent?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why the system is broken. Because, we had a court decision in 2016 saying it's unconstitutional. Now that we have all these new judges. That's why they're going back. All these judges appointed by Janet Mills are going to make a decision on ranked choice voting, whether it's constitutional or not.
Let me just say, they said it was illegal in the races in which they required a plurality, not a majority. So it was not true in the primaries.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, Defense Secretary Hegseth and his trip to Maine. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who prefers the title Secretary of War, visited Navy shipbuilder Bath Iron Works this week, the first cabinet-level visit in Trump's second term. I was there, and I can tell you he was warmly received by a raucous crowd. As part of his ongoing Arsenal of Freedom tour, Hegseth spoke for half an hour to 1,000 hard hat-wearing BIW workers. He also toured the shipyard, seeing the DDG class of destroyers BIW has been building for decades. Hegseth telling his audience the Pentagon wants more of those ships.
You're designing and constructing the most advanced ships in human history, integral elements of ensuring peace through strength. You see, we live in a realistic world where made in the USA and made with urgency matters. A realistic world where if you want American strength, you need to have American manufacturing.
Secretary Hegseth also waded into the culture wars, knocking, as the Trump administration does, past diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
No more climate change worship, social justice, or political correctness. We're done with all that garbage. We're done with our diversity is our strength. But the reality is your unity is your strength. Your shared purpose is your strength.
What do you think?
Well, it's like watching a Jerry Springer show. I mean, the drama around it, the coming out, and I think this is probably part of the Save Susan Collins tour. That I think they're sending him to places where there's people who need a boost, and certainly the economic engine of BIW was that. I just think he does not have the gravitas at all to be the Secretary of Defense. I think it was more like a cheerleading thing, a pep rally before a football game, and to not even talk about the size of our military budget, right? The size of our ICE budget is bigger than the entire defense or war budget of Russia, right? So
the military, though, is $1 trillion now, maybe going up to $1.5 trillion.
Right, and so I mean, just think about the hugeness of that. Think about, it's so hard to see, and there was many protesters outside saying the same thing. To continue down this road of continuing to build ships, and now Trump wants to build the luxury yacht defense ship or warship, whatever it is. I think we talked a long time ago about conversion efforts, about things we could use BIW for clean energy to help things. And then the other thing is, how many people in that audience were people of color, people who actually benefited from DEI? And he called that and social justice and climate change garbage when we have lobstermen who can't make a living because our oceans are warming. So to just take all that and be this blustery, macho man, it's so anti-American strength and American peace.
Well, Joe, peace through strength sounds like
Ronald Reagan. And I totally agree with him.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in a world right now where China has a bigger navy than the U.S. We need to build more warships. And Bath builds the best ships. Something Maine can be proud of. People working at BIW has always been a proud heritage of the state of Maine. This idea that we're going to convert it to what, solar panels? How ridiculous is that? We are very good at building warships, and we ought to be proud of the people that work at BIW that do that. And, I don't know how many people in that audience, were given raises or whatever through DEI. Maybe they earned their way there. Maybe they just earned their way there.
No, absolutely. I'm not saying affirmative action. I'm saying making sure that people are treated well. I spent a lot of time working with women who worked at BIW back in the 80s, and I can tell you DEI helped them a lot because they were treated like garbage. And so I think, I just think that we have to say, what message are we giving? And if we look at where the real security risks are, they're not on the ocean. They're not in the Navy. their drones, their cybersecurity. That's the new warfare. It's
Well,
not,
Secretary Hegseth talked about Iran, Venezuela, and Yemen specifically of 3 examples where we know Trump has taken action.
Right.
To,
Venezuela, yeah.
Well, Venezuela,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
to depose the leader Maduro and bring him here for charges. Iran to, the idea was to obliterate its nuclear capabilities. And then Yemen, he talked about the Houthi rebels disrupting our shipping lanes. He defended all of those
You know what?
policies.
There's nothing wrong with the secretary going to a plant and energizing the workers there. They want, you know, what he did was no different than a football coach getting you excited before a game. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, if you're the CEO of a company and you have an employee meeting, one of your goals is to excite everybody in that room, to let them know that you're working for someone and for a mission and a goal. So I see nothing wrong with his visit to BIW.
And excite them by tearing down a whole group of people there. Right, and so like, right, can you imagine the football coach saying, hey, the Patriots coach saying, go guys, oh, but not the black guys, not you.
Well, he did tell them they could be proud of their jobs because what they're building helps deter the next conflict.
Right.
And he,
As long as you're a white guy.
I don't buy that at all.
That's what he said.
No, well,
That's what he said.
no,
That's what
he
he
was
said.
interesting to
he
me-
said DEI.
It was interesting to me knowing him from our congressional delegation is there when I've gone to BIW with other dignitaries, Navy secretaries. Of course, Congress was in session, but
Right.
normally you see Senator Collins, Senator King, and sometimes Representative Golden, Representative Pingree. They're all unified on keeping those defense contracts
Right.
coming.
That's 7,000 jobs at BIW. Plus, they need more workers. We don't have the trained workers that they need. We need to train more people to go and work at BIW.
Good union jobs.
Good union jobs are good for people who are new Americans and all kinds of people who could be trained for those jobs. But he clearly said you are not wanted here.
That's all for this edition of Political Brew. I want to thank our guests, Betsy Sweet and Joe Bruno, and thank you for watching.